Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jose. I'm here with Josh Domagala, Sales Director here at Triario. Today, we'll be discussing cutting-edge hacks to sell more using HubSpot's AI. So we have prepared this webinar because we meet with customers and prospects just like you, and they're struggling with how to leverage AI for their sales process specifically. So we figure we just grab a portion of that life cycle, which is when the lead is handled all the way until you close the deal, and how AI can help you sell more and sell faster. Josh will be leading the conversation today. So Josh, I'll let you open up the stage for you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jose. So what we're going to be doing, as Jose said, is that we're going to be walking you through really how you can use AI in your sales process to do more. It's been the talk of the town since really it's come onto the scene about 2-3 years ago, and HubSpot specifically has invested a ton into it as well. So that's what we're here to talk about. Just to do a quick round of introductions here, Jose, since you're first on this list, do you want to do that first?
Yeah, of course. So team, I'm a co-owner here at Triario. I've been working in sales and marketing for over 10 years. Here at Triario specifically over 5 years now. Deeply technical and tech savvy and curious. So have a passion for teaching. So doing this is what makes me happiest about. So very happy to be here sharing this with you today.
Sure. And I'm Josh Domagala, as Jose said, sales director for North America. Total, I have about 7.5 years experience in sales/consulting. Most of that has been in HubSpot one way or the other. So for about 5 years of that 7.5, I was either working directly at HubSpot or on the agency side, like Triario now. So ultimately, from an agenda standpoint of what we're going to be looking at for the call today, is that we have a theme going of like thinking of sales like an obstacle race, which you can see some of like the jargon here that plays into that. So we're going to first be doing a warm up, which what we are going to describe that as is one, just some key trends that we've seen internally from using AI. Some of the things of why it's important, key use cases to sort of build the foundation of what we're going to be demoing. Then we're going to get into the actual demo itself for some of those important use cases that we think are going to be most beneficial for most of you. And then the final sprint to the finish line, which is kind of like our call to action, bringing everything together that we've talked about so far. And then lastly, we're going to open the floor for any questions you may have and answer those as well. So first things first, and this ties into that theme that I was talking about. What we typically see from a sales perspective is that there's pretty much always 5 obstacles or objections that people are running into. So it's either there isn't a need for it, somebody maybe likes it, doesn't have enough money, there's really no urgency to do this now, maybe no desire to even look at something in the first place, and then maybe the biggest pitfall of all is actually no trust of why your solution might actually be the best for them. So when we come to AI, these are based on internal metrics and a couple of studies that we did in Triario over like the last year and a half. And this is pretty much what we had saw and some of the value of what AI is doing and why it matters. So when it came to sales forecasting, this is obviously something that's pretty important, right, to all the sales leaders out there, but as well as sales representatives themselves too, because without knowing what's actually real and when it's coming in, you can't really know the lifeblood or the sales health of the organization to make strategic decisions to move forward, right? Maybe it's like putting more money into the product, hiring additional people, all of that. So we've seen AI make some pretty good strides there. For us personally, we saw a 37% increase in rep capacity. Basically, what this boils down to is that using some of the AI tools within HubSpot to help craft follow-up emails, do prospecting, automatic like call transcription, task assignment, all of that. It eliminates a lot of the quote unquote like busy work, if you will, and it's allowed the team to actually take on more deals. And Jose, keep me honest on this because you have a better view in it to me. But from my understanding, it seems like we increased like maybe 4 or 5 deals per rep per month on this.
Correct. So instead of actually hiring more people, we were able to tackle and handle more deals with the existing capacity that we had. And that was good because we also had this a lot of there were a lot of incoming deals for a specific new type of service, and that enabled us to handle all of that without increasing our sales and marketing cost.
Yeah, great to hear. So what we're also looking at too, and it ties into my original point, is pretty much complete visibility into call insights as well as next steps. Because part of what you'll see in the demo that we'll be doing in a little while here is that any information that you're putting into HubSpot, you'll have HubSpot's Copilot, which is one of their AI tools that will easily summarize anything that happened, whether it's across 15 emails and different sales activities, if it was a discovery call, demo, pricing call, etc., the transcription from that, and then you'll ask it and it'll give you good next steps and feedback based on what it has seen historically for you, what's worked, what's not. It'll be, hey, here's a potential risk in the deal. Here's how you could go around that, solve for it, all of those good things. And ultimately, what all of this attributed to was a 300% in ROI. A lot of this had to do with more deals that closed, but deals that were more expansive with additional services, to Jose's point, and just overall bigger clients that came in there. What this also meant for the day-to-day standpoint too is that we were looking at about 10 hours per week that was going back into each rep's arsenal. So what they could do with that was reinvest it into time that they needed to, right? So for some, if they needed to get up to speed on more like HubSpot features and functionality, they could dive into that. If it was visiting clients on site, if it was learning new skills, focusing on more deals, all of that good stuff. So really AI has changed the way that we're doing things here at Triario, and for the better. And I know that a question here that probably always comes up. So what are some real examples of how AI can actually help us based on these? So not to beat a dead horse on this, because I know we did touch on a few of these already, but some of the easy kind of table stakes ones to think about here are going to be like automatic following up, but also analyzing areas of risk as well too. So like if deals have become stale, where, we've all seen it, right? From a pipeline hygiene standpoint, where maybe we have something in a quote sent stage and it's been there for 10 or more days, right? That indicates a deal that probably has good momentum to close. Like, why has it not been touched in that long? We need to get on that. So AI can find that for us, flag it for us, and we can actually go tackle it from there. From the task elimination standpoint, a lot of the kind of menial day-to-day things that are a bit of a relic of the past now because of what tools can do for us, as far as, like I said, for like that call transcription, follow-up emails, updates to contacts, deals, who should I be prioritizing and why based on criteria. HubSpot's AI can help you with that. And then ultimately, it's great. All this sounds good in theory, but what are the actual measurable impact and results of this? So for example, like what we had seen, right, was like a 25% lead conversion. Sales cycles were decreasing, which is really good, especially in this day and age where most deal cycles have more stakeholders, there's more technical requirements that are needed, all of this. So with the challenge in the landscape of having these more complex sales cycle, AI is helping us reduce that time because of what it can do. And then ultimately the accuracy from the forecasting standpoint dramatically increased too. So we're actually making good strategic decisions based on data that's real and clean. Jose, I know I've been talking a good amount here. Not sure if you want to add anything.
No, I think you're spot on. The only thing that I would add to that is the main one of the main things that we notice is the conversion rates increase in pipeline, and we attribute that to the reps being able to spend more time building out a relationship or training their technical skills. At least on our own context, where we sell these technical services, right? And we need them to be trained on new stuff. There's new features coming up. There's technical trainings that we do on a weekly basis. So they were more invested into that, but also they had more time to meet with the customers, to follow up, and everything in the back that was adding to their workload, like creating those follow-up emails, researching on new customers' perspective. That was just something that they're not pretty much not doing anymore, because that's pretty much automated with everything that we're going to show you today.
Mm-hmm. And I think this leads perfectly into the next point here. So We see it a lot, whether it's on professional networks, social media, just kind of through the wind whispers that we hear of, is AI really going to completely replace salespeople? We don't think so. There's certain activities that it can replace for it, but for like the super technical use cases, the human element, those are things that can't be. But what it will do is work side by side with you as the best partner or assistant you've ever had to really enhance everything you're doing and help show you the way so that you can actually extract more value out of each individual instead of getting rid of them. So what this is going to look like, and I'm going to walk through the 5 steps and then jump into the demo instance from here. The first thing that we're going to start with here is the workspace. So for you that may not be familiar on this call of like what the workspace is within HubSpot, it is basically an isolated area for each salesperson to know like what they need to be doing on a day-to-day basis, from meetings they have coming up, tasks that are due, follow-ups, any leads they may have, deals, all of that good stuff. And then there's some AI components on top of this to help them streamline that so they know what they need to do and when. From there, we're going to be looking at how can it actually pull specifically the AI insights from our deals, right? So summarizing potentially what has happened, what should we do from a follow-up email standpoint, next steps. And a lot of that's going to come in through Copilot, where that's going to be that personal assistant that I was talking about. And then as well as AI enrichment and follow-up here. So for example, Breeze Intelligence and Copilot are pretty much one and the same. That is going to be the AI within HubSpot. So how can we get better, cleaner data so that we can prospect more effectively? I'll show you how Breeze can do that. And then also suggested follow-ups based on certain information as well too. There is also something within the AI hub of HubSpot, which is called Prospecting Agent. What you can do for this is you could have multiple different agents that are trained similar to like a GPT through like ChatGPT or any LLM, if you're familiar with that, to where you build it based on certain criteria of like what service you're trying to sell, maybe like a specific target account or ICP you're trying to break into. And then it can actually fully automate that process itself too. So this way that you're taking that prospecting for the most part off the plate of your salespeople. If, to Jose's point, you want them spending more time building those relationships and developing that technical skill set as well too. And then to cap everything off here, all of the activities are great. All the data points are great. But if we don't have any way to actually dive in and get granular insights into what's working, what's not, where we should be spending more time, where we shouldn't, and where everything is at from like an overall health perspective, it doesn't do you much good to have that. So we're going to cap it off with some reporting of how AI can actually build some reports for you within HubSpot, but then how it can also pull strategic insights from it so you can make accurate decisions off of that as well. So before I jump in here, Jose, any additional color that you would like to add?
No, I think we're ready to jump in.
Let's do it. Okay, sorry for the technical difficulty there. My key got stuck when I was trying to switch the different tabs here. So first things first of what we're looking at here, we're within HubSpot and under the Sales Hub here, we're right in the Sales Workspace. And you can see that I'm actually viewing Jose's because even as our CRO and one of our co-founders or co-owners, excuse me, he still does work some deals on a day-to-day basis. So what we can see at a first glance here is pretty much from that daily standpoint, what are the tasks that he needs to do? Are there any outstanding outreach activities? What does his schedule look like? And really some guided actions for what he might need to prepare for, any replies that are awaiting him, all of this so he can understand what he needs to do to move these deals forward. So one thing that I do want to show quickly here is under the prospects tab, Jose doesn't have any, but for myself, I do, because I also work deals here as well. So what I can see from this standpoint, right, is I can slice and dice this by certain information if I wanted to through the filters, right? So I could see it's a specific stage in our lead pipeline. If I wanted to know based on like a title or if they visited like a specific page on our website, all of that, I can do that. But what I think the most valuable for me here in the workflow is by pulling up Copilot, which always lives with you no matter where you are in HubSpot, in the top right here, I can just pull this up whenever I need to. So in this case, I can ask it to summarize, and we'll take Shannon as an example here. And it'll pull this information about any activity that I've had with Shannon so far and anything that she has done from a behavioral standpoint as well. So Shannon's a good example to show this as, because her lead type here is we're reattempting to get in contact with her. So as you can see, here's like the follow-up task, which is the most recent from August. There's some notes from July, all of this. Now, to save some time here, I'll be like, based on the information that you have, write me a draft of a good follow-up email. And one thing that you'll see is that you can see like professional and friendly. If you want to have a different tone or like your brand voice is different, you could have that as well too. And so what I see here now is that I have my subject line. I have the messaging here. I can read this, review it. If I like it, maybe you want to tweak anything, and then I could ship this off to Shannon from here. So this way, right, it'll really help me understand who these people are, how should I approach this, and then help me actually execute on that task as well too. So from there, something else that I want to show from Jose's standpoint, right, is that we can use this for open deals as well too, where AI is going to pull some like deal scores based on certain criteria, which I'll show you one example of that a little bit later. But as you can probably understand, for the active sales opportunities Jose is working, we don't want to share publicly that customer information just from the privacy standpoint. So there is one specific deal that we have as a closed won customer here, which is Galen. So for example, right, it was a $70,000 deal. It took about 2 months to reach the closed won stage. And if we wanted to dive into this to really understand maybe a bit better of what Jose could have done, or a specific salesperson as well, what I can do is ask it to summarize this deal and tell me what Jose could have done differently to speed up the sales cycle.
Putting me on the spot.
That's right.
No, but I like it. Because actually, we actually use that all the time. Whenever I'm filling in for Josh or vice versa, then we use it to get up to speed or to understand what's going on. So it's super, super helpful. And it sees much more data than I would if I were to log into the deal and read all of those emails and communications and whatnot. So yeah, it's pretty much having ChatGPT work for you.
Yep. And so there is always a little bit of delay because there's a lot of information that it's running through, but you can see it's pretty quick. So what we can see, right, is we have the summary of the deal. We have the current status of where it's at in the pipeline, who owns it, right, and all these key activities. So you can see it's all important information, right? So what was figured out during our discovery and qualification stage, product fit, proposal, signature phase, all of this good history to really understand what happened during this deal, but why we won it as well. So anyways, let's actually get to what we were trying to here of like, what could we do to improve? So we can see some certain bottlenecks or delays that popped up, right? So for example, like delaying for sign off, there were some administrative hiccups, and we have explanations for all of these things as well too. And now we're actually into the meat of what we want here. So here's what Jose could have done differently, right, from all these different points. So like expediting internal buy-in, streamlining that signature process, which was identified as a bottleneck, right? Setting clear administrative next steps, and then also trying to get more urgency in there. So you can see we have 6-7 points on this, and then a quick recap summary as well too. So what this also enables as well, not just from a management standpoint, but any HubSpot rep that has, or rep within HubSpot that has access to this is able to go in and they can kind of self-coach, self-learn from this and see, oh, you know what, like, you know, point 6 actually makes a lot of sense because I remember at this point in the process, this happened where now that I know this, I can do this next time too. Because one thing is that it's always great when a deal is won, but that doesn't mean we did everything perfectly or to the best that we could. So with Breeze here, even in our victories and the losses, it's always going to show us a way that we can be doing something better to constantly always improve. And this goes back to that sentiment of where AI is not here to replace us, but to make us do our jobs better, right? Because if Jose tightens all of these things up on the next deal like this, maybe it won't take that 2-month time to close this, or maybe it would be 6 weeks, even less than that too. So that's a better velocity for us, but also because we are aware of these gaps in the process, we have more expertise that will come across the client to build more trust and credibility as well. Before I keep going on here, Jose, is there anything you would like to add?
No, everything there is spot on, by the way. We did have a couple of hiccups towards the end of the sales process because we didn't anticipate the signature, and that was on us. So definitely that feedback is something that is valuable and real.
Mm-hmm. Great. So what we're now going to be looking at too here is some examples of how can we actually start to pull some data from Breeze as far as like what's actually happened from a summary standpoint, but then also how it's ranking deals based on certain data points and activities that have happened. So for example, this is one new lead that had came in through us. And the way our automation works is that if a specific activity is taken, like a form submission like that, we have a deal created that goes into our first stage, which is to be qualified. So just at a quick glance here, right when I click into this deal, as you can see, it's assigned to me. I can see anything that has happened where that on August 15th, that's when the first task took place. A form was submitted. If I wanted to ask a follow-up question here, for example, like, what were some things in the form that stood out to you that I should focus on? I could ask about that, and I can have a conversation with this to better prepare myself for my outreach here, if it's not automated, or a potential first call as well. And then what we'll also see is that HubSpot, specifically Copilot and Breeze here, will score this based on certain criteria. So like I said, it could be based on like certain behavioral intent that was taken, the number of like email engagements, phone calls, meetings that have gone back and forth, certain data properties like the stage it's in, all of that. And it gives it a weighted score. So in this case, it's a pretty new deal. Not a lot has really happened. We haven't made contact yet. So this is pretty low. And it explains that progression why. So originally yesterday it was actually 13, but because there's still no contact, the way this is viewing it based on our historical data of how deals are won and those engagements and the velocity there, it docked some points because it's starting to trend in a negative direction. So I can see that be like, hey, I need to pay more attention to this. Let me dive in and do what needs to be done and reach out maybe in a more personalized or different way here to get that conversation rolling. And then what you'll be able to see too is that there is a score trend over time as well. And go ahead, Jose. I think I heard you say something.
Yeah, and you can think of that number 8 as 8%. So what's the closing probability of that deal? And it is a separate metric from the actual probability that you have set in the pipeline or the manual that your reps would do. And this is AI powered. So we have learned that this is much more accurate than any regular or stage-based forecast metrics that we set up for our clients. And it leads to a better and more accurate forecast overall. So yeah, it's definitely a way to focus your attention on the deals that actually are very low on probability or very high.
Mm-hmm. And then something else that is cool about what you can do through the AI tools within HubSpot as well is you can see this note that was populated when that form was submitted as well. So this was context that I did not know. I had nothing to do with this, and it populated automatically based on an example workflow, which a workflow is an automation path within HubSpot that we're using the AI for. So for example, some of the things that we would care about, right? So I can be educated when I reach out here is what do they sell as a business? You can see this is their business model, problems that they solve, their ICP, target personas within that ICP, and the value proposition of basically why use them over a competitor, right? And so this way I have that snapshot to either nurture them in a more effective way or do some more research into this to become even more prepared to that first call to get more of that trust and credibility out of the gate. Because as an agency partner, one of the things, if not the most important thing that a client needs to feel with us is that we know what we're doing, we understand them and their processes, and we've done this before. So starting out on the right foot by having information like this is key to that process. Mm-hmm. So what this looks like here, and I just wanted to keep this pretty basic because I'm sure we have folks of maybe like introductory level to HubSpot, potentially experts on this as well too. Within every HubSpot workflow, which is those automation paths, you have which is called a trigger. So a trigger is either a specific data point or it's an action that somebody took to actually kick off this path here. So what we have here is that we have the trigger being for pipeline new deals that are either for our Latin American team or our North American team. And then we want the deal type to be anything that is new. So what happens here is that once it has this criteria, it's automatically enrolled into this workflow. And then we have a delay for 1 minute. What we then do is that we built in logic to where we have Breeze then inferring company value proposition and ICP. So some of this information, right, like what they sell, problems they solve, their ICP, that's where that's coming from. We don't have to ask to go search that. It's doing it on its own, right? To show you some examples of what else you could do with AI into these, right? If we wanted to ask Breeze like a specific question, like we saw I did through Copilot, we could do that. If we want to know maybe about like company news, if there's already been information from like the past, right, to summarize all of that. If we wanted to do one of those prospecting agents, which we'll get to in a little bit as well, you could do that as well. So you can have this be as granular or general as you want for what you're trying to accomplish through the AI here. Then what we have as the next step after the value proposition is we're going to have it research that company news so we can get even more of this right to populate in. And then ultimately the task that happens after it collects all this information for us is creating that note, which you're seeing here. So with that said, this is pretty powerful. There's a lot that you can do through the automation workflows here. And ultimately, it's going to help, especially from a prospecting standpoint or lead qualification standpoint, the manual effort or time it would take to do all that research, and not even just research, but relevant research. So we can focus more on solving their problems and understanding who they are and what they care about. With that said, Jose, is there anything you want to add here?
No, again, this ties back to what we said before about how to remove that manual process. Anything that is not adding value to the customer, and that can be automated in the back so our reps can focus on building trust and rapport on those engagements with the customers. So this is a good example of that.
Mm-hmm. So also tying into the enrichment side of things. So all I did here for our actual database, I went to contacts and then this pulled everybody. So you can see we have about 34K total within here. And what you'll see is that similar to how we have like that little diamond for the Copilot side, we can see that we have enrich records as well as some potential options under more here, like check enrichment coverage. So something else that Breeze can do for you all, right, is that like, let's say we wanted to have certain information like their job title or the industry that the company's in, where they're located, something like that, but it's missing. Breeze can go scour through a tool that HubSpot acquired, I think it was last year or the year before, which is basically an enrichment data tool. And it uses that information to populate that into your contacts within HubSpot. So I just selected a group batch here of, I think it was like 9 people. And then what I can do is it'll show me like the check enrichment coverage, right? So for these 9 that are already selected, you can see that 7 of these have an eligible work email, which is good because that's what HubSpot identifies contacts on. And then we can see for like these pertinent pieces of information, how many of these 9 are actually already covered. So we can see that between like 71 and 57%, we have most of these that are already good for like the state where they're located, first name, city, all of that. But for these that we don't have, this is important information that we will need, right? Like you absolutely need somebody's first name, all of that. So what we can just do then here is hit enrich records, and it just did all of that for us. So now all that information, assuming it can be found, is now populated in there.
And one thing that is very critical here is that typically we see that B2B companies, their sales reps use other tools like ZoomInfo or Apollo and whatnot to enrich their records when they're doing like one-to-one engagement. Whereas in HubSpot, you have, well, it is different, but if you use the enrichment tools within HubSpot, both the marketing and the sales team can work with the enriching their records. So I think their marketing team is doing all of these campaigns and via workflows and enriching the data to create more granular branching logic within their communication workflows. And when they come to the sales team, they receive that lead already enriched, so it streamlines their operations from there, from the first outreach all the way until they close it. And HubSpot has been investing a lot in these enrichment tools. Again, it's not ZoomInfo at all, or Apollo, or any other, but it is growing fast and it's getting better.
Mm-hmm. To continue on for how this can be a good assistant for us, not just for pulling in information, but identifying those risks, which we talked about a little while ago during the actual like slides presentation side, is that another example. So a deal Jose's working. I believe this is an existing client and this is an upsell project that we have going for them. What we can see here is that we have this in that quote sent stage, and then the AI picked up through a workflow that we had that this is now at risk because it's in this stage, which shows good intent, good deal momentum, and now it hasn't been contacted in 14 days. So from here, what it also did is it gave Jose an example of an email that he can send for a follow-up, right? That might be good. So from here, this task is assigned to him. He gets notified of that. He would then go in, work that task. This email would pop up. He can tweak that, do whatever he likes for it, and then continue on that process from there.
So it is grabbing all of the data that you guys have within the CRM. Those could be past communication notes, meeting transcripts, and whatnot. And it's suggesting a follow-up email. It's saving us hours, hundreds of hours a month in our team, just because sometimes you're just pushing that task of like following up because you don't know what to say. Well, here's what you can say. You can tweak it and then send it out, or have it send it out on your behalf. That you can also do. So I think this is very powerful. But again, this requires you to have all of the data within the CRM, all the transcripts in there, the enrichment, and AI is only as powerful as the data that it works with. And I did miss the last question that was showing on the screen. Is that enrichment an add-on service? Within HubSpot, when you purchase HubSpot Professional or Enterprise, it comes with a set of credits. So those enrichment will use a number of credits. You can add on more credits if you are using the AI tools like this one.
Mm-hmm. And something else too that is a pretty important value driver for this as well. This is something that seems pretty simple on paper when we think about it, right? But things like this, if we're doing things manually or even like have some automation, but maybe it's not where it needs to be, these things are really easy to slip through the cracks and start to build up, right? So in this case, we want to reduce the risk of that manual error as much as possible because it's bound to happen, right? And if something is in an important stage towards the end of your process, like quote sent, this is something that we definitely want to be on top of and make sure that one, it's actually qualified to be in this stage if it's still there. But and if it is qualified, how do we actually move that forward? Because we don't want to leave this revenue on the table. So now into the prospecting agent side, which we kind of teased a little bit so far. Where this lives is under Sales Hub. It's the prospecting agent here. And there's going to be default agent setups that will be out of the box, but then you can also customize this to your needs. So for example, this is one where it's Triario's prospecting agent. And I'm going to show you what this looks like, right? So first and foremost, you start from the ground level here of what's actually the name of this and the description of what it is and what it should be doing. So then once we get into the identity of it, so for example, who is this going to be working on behalf of? The logic will be applied to anybody using this agent. What we'll want this to be, right, is, for example, the contact owner. So in this case, we have it going to Jose and his inbox is attached to this. So it'll seem like all the emails the agent is doing is coming from Jose. Going back to the tone side, which we saw a little bit from the prior question we had asked Copilot, the brand voice, right? So you can set the personality and tone of how you want these emails to come across. So let's say, for example, maybe Jose has like a little bit more of a polished or professional tone versus me, where it's a little bit more laid back. we could have this segmented based on how we want it to be for the individual agents that we're working with here. And then this will determine how it actually comes across through the copy that's going to be created for these emails. So from a language standpoint, we do have it in English. You could change it to what you want, but then there's also a possibility for a multi-language approach as well. So, and I do want to pull up the preview at this point too of like what this cadence or automated email sequence would look like too. What we start with before the email messaging actually goes out is one, you're going to hook up your own website to this so it can scan it to really understand who you are, what you do, and why you're different. And that's going to be populated here, right? So what do we actually sell? What's our value proposition? What are the main drivers that we solve for where somebody should work with us? What products or services do we do? Who do we specialize in working with for this specific agent, right? And who within those companies are we actually trying to get in contact with? Then what we'll see here is that throughout this, right, what do we actually want our call to action to be? So is it for them to book a meeting with us? Do we want them to actually like click on a link to maybe download something? Do we just want them to read a white paper or a case study? So then they'll reach back out to us. You can determine what that would be from here. And then from an email guidance perspective, which this ties right into the outreach, here's how this will typically work. So within these prospecting agents, there's usually 3 email steps that are going to go out. So we can see for step 1 here, we could change the length of what we want this to be. We think 3 sentences is pretty good for a first email because especially if it's cold, you haven't talked to somebody before, this is a target account company you're reaching out to. They probably get a ton of emails like this. So we want to keep it short and have it stand out, right? So this is what it will do for the initial email. Our second email is that the agent's then going to write that follow-up, different angle from the first approach because it probably didn't work, is that call to action didn't get taken advantage of or used, and it'll have it be a little bit shorter to keep it concise. And then lastly, third email is going to follow the same trend that the second email is based on the first one as well. So if we want to see what this would actually look like, right, this is pre-populated. We have the title or the subject line for the email here, having all that information of like kind of who they are, why Triario services might be relevant to them, pulls in Jose's signature, looks like it's sent exactly from him, right, even though it's actually the AI prospecting for him. We're then going to have a little bit of a delay here, so about 2 to 5 days. We'll have that second email go out. We can see it's a little bit shorter, still have that same call to action in there as well to hopefully get them to convert. And then we're going to do 2 to 5 days again. We could have some more follow-up emails in there if we wanted to. And then we have that third final touch point here as well. So that's the sequence that this can run through. And then what you will see as well from the, let me finish going through this first. So something that is key for how this works as well is you could have this be semi-automatic or fully automatic. In our case, we recommend the semi-automatic approach because while this is powerful in what it can do, it's important to have human eyes on it as well too to make sure that one, the information looks correct. You know, there's not anything funky going on with the formatting. Maybe we want to tweak something from a messaging standpoint to make it a little bit more potent, all of that. So this way, these won't fire off completely automatically. But in this case, once it gets our approval, it's going to go out automatically and continue on from there. So what we can also do from a guardrails perspective, right? Like we don't want this to be going out on a Saturday or at a strange time, super late at night where nobody's going to want to look at it and might even make them a little bit annoyed if they do get it there. So you can set basically when and where this is going to go out and what that outreach frequency should look like as well. And then lastly, if there's any like custom instructions that you would want to add into this as well, you could do it. So for example, in this case, we wanted to, no matter what, always be helpful and professional in those communications, because that's how we want our company Triario to be perceived. So you can put in specifics for this depending on how you see fit as well. So what this looks like as well too, is that now we have that agent. That's the setup of the agent of what it will actually do. And then you could see anybody who's actually enrolled in this and the process they're at as well too. And then from like an analyze tab, because this didn't have a ton of data because we use it for demo purposes here, what I want to show you is a pretty close comparison to what you could expect through like a normal sequence, right? So for those that aren't familiar, a sequence within HubSpot is basically an automated email cadence that goes out similar to what we just saw through like those 3 different email tabs. Maybe you have call tasks in there, so on and so forth. The key takeaway here is that from it, right, you're going to have real-time data about these emails, whether it's through the prospecting agent, a sequence, whatever, of like, is it actually being engaged with? Are we getting clicks into our CTAs? What step is actually converting, right? So we can see we have like a 30% meeting conversion rate on this first step. Very good open rate, all of that. So this way we can really slice and dice the information to know that, hey, we have a pretty solid return on our first step. That's good. But let's look at the following steps here to see if we can tweak something there to maybe get that meeting rate up, right? Because we go from 30 to 5%, which is a pretty big drastic drop from there. So all in all, that is everything I wanted to cover from the prospecting agent. Jose, anything you would like to add before we go to our final topic here, which is the reporting?
Yeah, the only thing that I would say is that many teams sales teams are used to using or leveraging prospecting tools for sending out emails, automating that. And typically we see they use that as a separate tool. When you use that as part of your CRM, it enables you to create other more compelling strategies. So think of creating a sequence, a prospecting agent that is it's tracking the users that are navigating your website, and once they navigate, they go to the pricing page. It grabs their data if they have it or it's recognized via the cookies, and it researches on their website using the company domain, creates all these emails and send them out to book a meeting because it detects interest or intent. So those are things that once you are using these prospecting tools within your CRM and you're working closely with your marketing team as well, then it opens many new doors and new strategies that you can leverage for generating more demand.
So similarly to the sentiment I expressed at the beginning of the call, where it's like, it's great to have all this data, but what do we actually do with this data? So where I'm at now within HubSpot is just from the left-hand side. I went to reports and it brings me to this screen. So you can see we have a couple different options of how we want to create these reports. And one example is the AI generated here. So an important call out of where the Breeze Intelligence report building is at for now is that it can build single object reports within HubSpot. So what I mean by that is the core objects in HubSpot are contacts, companies, deals, tickets, and then a custom object could be considered a single object as well. So this wouldn't be able to do a report that takes into consideration contacts and companies, but it could do contacts or companies or deals. So you can type in the prompt of what you would want this to be, right? Or it will give you some from an existing as well too. So in this case, right, like let's just see from a Triario standpoint, how many deals did we create this quarter? And it's going to take its time, not too long, probably about like 20 seconds tops, and pull an actual report on this, right? So you can see that here was the prompt that we asked, all the measures, the report details for it. If we wanted to put some filters in there, we could. And then the actual report was pulled. So we could see that from this quarter alone, we've had 235 deals that were created. And then if I wanted to actually dive into what these deals are, you can see these are all of them. And I could click into them from an individual standpoint and it would bring me to that deal record from there. So that's one way that you'd be able to actually create reports through HubSpot. And then how do you actually pull insights from them as well too? So in this case, I'm in the same tab, right, where I just went to reports. It brought me to a drop down. I clicked days to close here. So basically sales cycle metrics here. And then what we'll see is off the cuff is a report summary from it, which this is being pulled in from the AI. So this is really the key for reports, right? Because you can have a subset of data, but it is, what does the data actually mean? This summary at a glance gives you what the data actually means and what you can do with it. And if I wanted to trust Copilot here, what I could do, right, is then, for example, I said for the same metrics, how do these results compare to the previous quarter? And it will pull some insights from there, right? And I could ask it other questions, have a conversation with it, and I can even build some reports as well too within there. So this way it makes you or helps you really take these data sets that you have and make data-driven decisions from them based on why it matters and where you want to go.
Yeah, Josh, if you scroll down just to show the report, the actual report. Yeah, so it's all the insights and all the conversations that Josh was showing, it's coming out of this report. So the report was already there, whether you build it manually or via using AI. And then once it has all the data and everything is in there, then you have the AI generated summary on top. Scroll up just a little bit, Josh, there, which is everything that we showed in here. So many times managers or reps needs to understand data, summarize something and send it to the directors via email or whatever. HubSpot is going to save you tons of time if you're doing that on a regular basis. And if you ever want to just answer a quick question like what was the close rate for this specific person over the last quarter, then you can do that in a couple of seconds.
Okay, so where that brings us is back to sort of the final step of that theme analogy we had going on. So we discussed some of the use cases, why it matters, how it can actually be carried out in HubSpot, and then where do we go from here, right? So we know we want to start eliminating some of the challenges we talked about using AI, but also using it in the right way. So we're here to help you, right? We do this from an educational standpoint, but it's also our bread and butter from the day-to-day services we provide. So happy to schedule a consultation or an additional call with anybody that may be interested in hearing a bit more about this. And with that said, too, we do also have a document that we can send over to really understand how similar companies are leveraging this in their space as well, too. And with that said, we are brought to the final portion here, which is the Q&A side. And so I'm sure there's probably questions that have came in or are coming in. So with that said, we're happy to filter through those and answer everything we can here with the remaining 14 minutes we have.
We do have one here. So for a sales team just starting to experiment with AI, what is the single most important action they can take to ensure a smooth and successful integration with HubSpot? So for this one, I can take this one. I believe the one thing that is critical when you are thinking of HubSpot, when you're thinking of AI at any level, is data integrity. I see many teams trying to leverage AI in a very simplistic or a complex way. But when the data is not there or is not, there's no data hygiene, is not reliable, then the outcome is just as reliable. So they cannot use that for any. So if they send any prompt, then the result might not seem very helpful, or the reports are not realistic and whatnot. So having a good understanding of your process, a good foundation within your CRM, data enforcement rules, and making sure that the data is in place is going to be the first step before you even be able to leverage everything that you saw here. Which, by the way, there's a lot of setups behind all of the items that we show you today. And that's what we specialize on, creating all that foundational structure for you and training your team to utilize the AI in a way similar to what we show you today.
For something else that I think is key for that too, is that if you're considering bringing AI into the mix, I think self-awareness is going to be pretty important from a sales motion standpoint. And what I mean by that is there are 4 key pillars to it. So for example, it's prospecting for deal creation, it's prospecting, then it's deal creation. It's actually moving those deals through the funnel and then actually closing them. So sales leaders know, or I would at least hope know, if there's a specific gap or gaps between those key pillars of actually closing a deal, right? So what we could also recommend is you work backwards from there, being, are you closing enough in deals? If it's no, okay, let's take a step back. Where are we actually moving them through the process? If it's no, we keep moving back, so on and so forth. But let's say we know that we do have enough deals. We're doing the prospecting, but we're having trouble getting them to a closed won stage. Then we can use the AI to evaluate those deals. So that's a main pain point we have, and see maybe what we're missing compared to deals that we are winning. So between just understanding from Jose's point, what he was saying, but also like that self-awareness of being like, hey, I think this is a problem area in our motion, and honing in on that, that's also a good first step.
Thank you, Josh. Next question. Quick question. What are the most common misconceptions about using AI in sales, and how does HubSpot AI overcome them? I think, and this ties back to one of our slides today, is that there's a common belief that AI is taking over and is going to replace your salespeople. But although that, if that happens in the future, it's not going to happen in the next couple of months, maybe years. And there's still a human touch to it. It's just eliminating everything that is repetitive, or it's not adding value to your customers. So I think that is one thing that HubSpot is very good at automating things on the back. And it also creates these guardrails or moments where the human input can come in for you to hit the send button for those emails, or to review the information, or to give you suggestions, or to give you, information to let you be a better sales reps for those human interactions that are yet to be replaced. Beyond lead scoring, what are the most impactful yet underutilized AI features in HubSpot that sales teams should be leveraging right now? Josh, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking from my perspective, right? When I'm working through the workspace and trying to understand deals, part of it is, when we're in the driver's seat, we like to think that maybe we know everything about it, or that we're in the right direction because we're hearing what we want. And I think a good tie back to this would be the deal we showed that was Jose's, right? Where it was sizable and it's a good working relationship we had with them, and it closed within a reasonable amount of time. But then we found out there was actually those 7 points that could have been handled differently, right? So what I would say is using AI not just as a tool that's something to like automate a task for you or ask a question that you don't know, but use it as like a true co-selling partner, right? Where instead of waiting until the end of the process to be like, what went wrong, use it along the way to be like, hey, based on what we have at this stage, I think I'm in a good position because of X, Y, or Z. What are you seeing that I could be doing differently? So I think just using it continually throughout the process versus waiting for a reaction at the end.
I love that. I think having it co-sell with you is super powerful. And actually, there's a lot of studies on co-selling, just because, well, in the old-fashioned, where there were two brains associated with one specific opportunity, you would see more. You have two pairs of eyes on a specific deal, and you see the things that the other person would not otherwise. So I think that's super, super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
How can sales leaders effectively measure the ROI of implementing AI tools in their HubSpot workflows beyond just lead conversion rates? That is a very good point, Salome. So I would say that whenever you implement AI, you should be focused on something that could either be conversion rate, sales cycle, or making your sales team more efficient by saving them time. So depending on how you are approaching that, let's say that you're trying to save your team time, as we did, and we save 10 hours per rep, I can quantify based on my expense how much money I'm saving on that. And with the time that I'm saving allocated towards a larger deal capacity, so they can tackle 37% more deals based on the numbers that we showed you before, then I can easily quantify the sales impact to that and compare that and calculate the ROI. So that is the way that you should do it. Just take it from a specific angle and do all the backwards engineering.
Yeah, and my answer would be the same to that, because the way I see it is have a defined goal in place of what you're trying to accomplish, and then what you're measuring that against, and the before versus after, and then the actions you took there. So it's kind of like a mini proof of concept that you're doing for the implementation of this.
Yeah. And we're running out of time here, but we're going to take one last question. How do you obtain the doc on how companies are using the AI that you mentioned or referenced? If you enroll in this webinar, we're going to be sending that out automatically. You should get it on your email. If you did not enroll, or if you don't get it, just send us an email or reach out through our website. It will get routed to either Josh or myself, and just mention, hey, I'm interested in the document. I'll send it out to you directly. Okay. Team, I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today. I know we spent a little bit more than we anticipated, but I hope you found some value in today's chat. And I would encourage you to start using AI for your sales processes. Go to our website, reach out via our form submission or our social media channels. We would love to hear from you and chat about how to optimize or implement AI for your specific sales processes. So have a good rest of your day and take care. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.